All right, as always, before I begin, I want to thank the good people at TorahAnytime.com for making the shiur as widely available as possible. And we're dedicating the schus of tonight's Limud HaTorah to Refuah Shlema, V'Yakameh Ben Buna, Seyechav Baschana Masha, L'Hal Ben Chaim L'Chaim, L'Il Nishmas Yehuda Ben Nachman. Okay, there's a Medrash Chazal in Parshas Vayera that after Makas Tzvadeya was over, the Tzvadeim all jumped into Kivshay Ne'esh. They all jumped into Kalachayvins and basically immolated themselves. And Chazal say that Chanani, Mishal, V'Azaya, that were Nitzel V'tay Kivshay Ne'esh, were nice to Kal V'Chaim B'atzman. They say if the frogs that are not Baalei Bechira and they're not Yidden and they're not Mitzvah, Al Kiddush Hashem. If they were Ma'aseh Nefesh Al Kiddush Hashem, so Kal V'Chaim that we certainly should. So, in deference to this Maimer Chazal on this week's Parsha, I decided to do a few Nekudis in the Minchat Chinuch on the mitzvahs of Kiddush and Chilul Hashem, the mitzvahs Reish Tzadik and Reish Tzadik Vav. Okay, so before we even start reading anything b'fnim, before we start reviewing the basic halachas of Mesiras Nefesh Al Kiddush Hashem, I want to ask somebody there's a lamdisha terminology called a Svara Chitzayna. Okay, are people familiar with the term Svara Chitzayna or not? What's a Svara Chitzayna? Ephraim, you know what a Svara Chitzayna is? Svara Chitzayna?
I mean, that would be the without even having a raya, that would be
right.
The first.
Right. Well, we would say l'chayra or l'famriyat, your first look at something. Ilmale the Torah had something to teach us on a topic, like the menschliche seichel, common sense, horse sense, whatever you want to call it. What does common sense dictate? Before psukim, before drashas, what does common sense dictate? Okay, so let me put a question on the floor. Okay? The Eibishter created the world. The Eibishter is the Beira. The Eibishter is the Mitzvah. We're the Bruim. We're the Avadim. We're the Mitzuvim. What is the Svar Chitzayna on the topic of Yaharg Val Yavar, Yavar Val Yaharg? If an anos, if somebody comes to you and tries to force you to do an Aveira, let's talk about any kind of Aveira. Okay? You had stomach problems all day. It's 2 minutes before Shkia. For Tefillin today, it's now or never. You want to put on Tefillin. Okay? And somebody comes and points a gun at your head in a way that you can't disarm him, you can't shoot him back, and he says, don't put on those Tefillin. You put on those Tefillin, I'm going to shoot you. Do you put on the Tefillin or not? If you don't know, no preconceived notions. You never learned Sanhedrin. You don't know any drushes. You don't know any Gemaras. What does your common sense tell you should do? Die and avoid the Avera, in this case the Bittul Asay, or do the mitzvah, or avoid an Avera. Let's say the guy wants to eat a pork sandwich. What does the Svara tell you?
Avoid it.
Avoid the Avera. Die.
No.
Avoid dying.
Avoid dying.
Avoid dying. That without a pasuk. That's what your Svara tells you. Even though the Eibishter is who he is and we are who we are. Think so? It's so pashut?
I understand the question.
Yeah.
What I mean, who he is and who we are. Somebody's pointing a gun to you.
Right.
It's a gun enough flushes. If you don't do it, they're going to get killed.
I'm asking you, you came in a few minutes late. I'm asking you something that the Lamdanim refer to as Svar Chitzayna. Svar Chitzayna means the outside logic. But before there are any psukim in the Torah, which are often very counterintuitive, often very faket, the opposite of what we would normally think. Especially when it comes to Amunas Chachamim, we have a yardstick on a Masamida. Afilu Oimel Chal Yamin Shu Small. Even if he tells you right is left and left is right, you still have to listen to the Chachamim, right? Okay, but before I ask the Chacham, before I look to the psukim of the Torah, before I know the drushes, before I know the halachas, what does common sense tell me? If I'm confronted with that ultimate challenge of devotion to Hashem, keep the mitzvah and die, or lose the mitzvah, or transgress the Aveira, as the case may be, but go on living. Which one should I do? Without any psukim. What does your common sense tell you? So his common sense tells him, go on living. Why?
Maybe it's not common sense.
I'll give you a svara. He who lives and runs away lives to fight another day. How about that? Okay, this guy got me right now, but I can do so many more mitzvahs, and I can avoid so many more averis if I go on living. If I die, that makes some questions. Yeah, there is such a svara. I didn't make it up out of thin air. Okay, that's a pasuk. That's not a svara. We're not up to that yet. I'm asking, what would we think without any psukim? Okay, so let me just tell you like this. Maybe you're going to say this inadmissible as evidence because I'm talking from a Musa Sefer, but if you think so, stay tuned for the second shiur, and I'll tell you why it's not inadmissible as evidence. Basil Zisharim, when he's talking about Bedarke Knias HaZahiris, the meat of Zahiris, how's a person kind of meat of Zahiris? So he gets into a very, very fascinating shmooze over there of how Kaviyachal the Eibishter balances the Midas Hadin with Midas Harachman. And he says, Al Pi Midas Hadin, there are three things that should happen that are not this way because of the existence of Midas Harachman. Number one, all Einshim should be immediate. Okay? You eat a ham sandwich, a lightning bolt comes down and then hits you in the mouth. You do something, you chayav misa, a lightning bolt should come down and electrocute you to death. That's pure Midas Hadin, no hamtakas adinim, no mizug of rachmim, and then that's pure din. Number two, he says, there should be no gradations of averos. We know that a bittul mitzvah saseh is not as chomer as being over on a lav, shem by maisa. A lav shem by maisa is not as chomer as a lav sheyesh by maisa. A lav sheyesh by maisa is not a chomer as something with a misa b'dei shemayim, not as chomer as a karis, not as chomer as chenek, and within the Arba Mises Bezdin there are gradations of chomer, of severity, right? Says the Mesil Sisharm, there shouldn't be any such thing. Any misstep, the smallest misstep, you forfeited your right to exist. The Eibishter is the Beira, he's the Mitzvah. What right do you ever have to be Mam Rapiv and go on living? If I'm a software programmer and I write a program that's full of bugs, I throw it in the garbage and I start from the drawing board. I'm going to punch my keyboard A and a Z is going to come up on the screen. I'm going to move my mouse to the right and I'm going to get the arrow on my screen turning to the left. Of what use is such software to me? Go back, throw it out, and start again. Start with something new. We're learning in text, so you want to sit where we have a hand at, please. Okay, and if you don't mind, also we just want to keep accurate records. Wait. Okay, and I know why you're here, but okay, whatever the case may be. All right, so to me, that's a svara faket. I hear your svara. Okay, it's discretion is the better part of valor. Mutav shichal Shabbos achas the Kaim Shabbos v'yishma Shabbos is harbe. But there's also a svara that no, that's before I know any psukim, the Eibishter is who he is. He's the software writer, the software designer. I'm the software. If I don't follow the commands, I'm malfunctioning. What right do I have to exist? Right? What?
Everybody is Bechir. Imagine there would be no Bechir if they get right away.
So we wouldn't have to worry about the Bechir because he'd be dead. But Meisel Kashi, there's any Bechir.
That's not his intention.
You want to know the Ramchal's teretz of Mesil Shem? Okay, he has a mahalach of how Rachman mitigates these things. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But I'm saying if you look what's just and what's fair is if he's the Beira and he's the Mitzvah and he's the Nice and Atayra and we owe our very lives to him, what right do we have to go on living if it's connected with Sinai? Okay. Anyway, this is something I want to say by way of Hagdama. Okay, we're going to be skipping around. I want to do, bite-sized, self-contained chunks if we can. All right, where the Aleph is, Hine. I'll call Averis Shabbatayra Chutz Meshalosh Hamuvaris. All Averis of the Torah, except for three that are explained in Sugyus all over Shas. Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayis, Shlichas Damim. Those three cardinal sins. Im Ansei Anos, if somebody is forcing him, V'raitz L'hargai Im Lo Yaver, and he wants to kill the person, if he will not be over the Avera. V'oz Eine Shas Exera, V'gam B'tzina. Okay, now it's very complicated. Let me spell it out outside, and then we'll read it b'fnim in the Minchas Chinuch. Basically, the halachas of Kiddush Hashem, of being Ma'aseh Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, are as follows. You have three big averis that, despite any variables, okay, the din is Yaharg Val Yavar. I'll call Mitzvah Shabbatari Yavar Val Yaharg. Except for these three, if the Anas tells you don't put on tefillin today, if the Anas tells you wear a shatnez beged, shave with a razor, anything like that, you should do the Avera and go on living. Yavar Val Yaharg. Be over the Avera, don't allow yourself to be killed. These three Averis, Gilei Arayis, Shlichas Damim and Avodah Zarah, the din is Yaharg Val Yavar. You have to allow yourself to be killed, and you should not be over the Avera. no variables. It doesn't matter what the kavana of the person who's forcing you to do so is. It doesn't matter what the state of anti-Semitism or geopolitics or anti-Jewish gezerah. It doesn't matter if it's in private, if it's in public, who the audience is. None of this matters. If it's these big three, as we shall call them, then the din is always Yaharg Val Yavar. But there are other circumstances where it could be Yaharg Val Yavar, where the din demands that you lay down your life and not be over the Avera, even for much lesser Averas. Basically, we'll get more pratis. Those basic two variables are: is it b'fahesia? Is it in front of a minyan of Jews? And is it shas hashmad? Is it a time of anti-religious Jewish gezeres? I don't mean Nuremberg laws in Nazi Germany. I mean the ancient Greeks or the modern day communists who are trying to destroy the religion, not the nationality, not the ethnicity. They're trying to destroy the religion. That's called the Shas Hashmad. They're trying to get Jews to convert, fill in the blank, Catholicism, Mormonism, the Greek pantheon, any other religion that they're trying to get us to keep or to observe, or to just drop Yiddishkeit as a religion and the godless atheist of communism. It doesn't matter. That's called the Shas Hashmad. And then the din is Yarg Val Yavar, even on lesser Averis. How lesser Averis? Gemara goes so far as to say, I feel arcus of the Masana. If Jews have a distinctive style of lacing their shoes, or it's a machlokes Rishonim exactly what it means, the color of the shoes, the laces on the shoes, and the Goyim wear different kinds of shoe styles, and that's what the guy's going to you to do. It's not a Daraisa, it's not a Rabbanan, it's not a Bittul Mitzvah say. It's a style. It's a nationally identifiable, it's like an ethnicity thing, kind of a thing. You know? Jews wear leather shoes and Goyim wear gym shoes, Lamazaga. And the guy's trying to get you to wear a gym shoe, where no Jews wear gym shoes, and it's a Shas Hashmad, or it's Bafahesia, then you have to lay down your life. Where it's not a public, massive Shas Hashmad, but it is a Kavana Lahavar al Das. This particular guy has a bee in his bonnet. He wants to see Jews abandon Judaism. It gets a little dicey. Now we're ready to read it b'fnim. But I wanted the Eilim to be basically familiar with it before we read it b'fnim. Okay, so we're in the number Aleph. We're like the third line, 3 words from that line. V'losh Rambam kan halach Aleph. Shem mitzvahs. It says by all the mitzvahs, and this was the pasuk that you were quoting before. Asher yasa oisam ha'adam v'chai b'hem v'lo yishamus b'hem. It's a drasha. We all know a famous pasuk. Elu atayra mitzvahs chachukim v'mishpatim. Asher yasa oisam ha'adam v'chai b'hem. These are various kinds of mitzvahs, have different names, chukim, mishpatim, and so on, that a person should do and live by them. So the prosaic meaning is you should live by them. That's how you should live your life. That should be your lifestyle. Chazal make a drush out of it. V'chai b'hem v'lo sheyamus b'hem. They should not be a cause of death. Coroner's death certificate, cause of death, religious stubbornness. That should not be a reason to die. Shmiras ha-mitzvahs, cause of death, shmiras ha-mitzvahs. No. The mitzvahs of the Torah were given to live by, not to die by. V'zeh mavur b'Sanhedrin sham, Rabbi Shmuel. I looked up the Gemara and I looked up the Gemara Sanhedrin and the Rambam. I'm not 100% sure why the Minchat Chinuch is saying this, and I welcome your input if you can figure it out. There's a machlokes like this in the Gemara Sanhedrin, Ayin Dal Dam Beis. If there are big 3 Averis or big 2 Averis. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel holds that even for Avodah Zarah, if it's not a Shas Hashmad and it's not B'Fahesia, you do not have to lay down your life. An Anas has you b'chadri chadarim, he's got you somewhere in private, and he wants you either to be able to Avodah Zarah or die. It's a machlokes Rabban Rabbi Shmuel. The Chachamim hold you have to die. Rabbi Shmuel says no. Worship the Avodah Zarah, go on living. And he quotes this pasuk, but it's not like the rest of the Chachamim don't hold the pasuk of V'chai b'hem by other mitzvahs. The Kiddush Rabbi Shmuel is apparently that he doesn't hold the drasha of Ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol nafshecha afilu neitos nafshecha. That's the drasha the Chazal have, that you are mechuyev to lay down your life rather than be over the Avodah Zarah. Why he says that the Rambam, just because he's quoting the V'chai b'hem, passes like Rabbi Shmuel, I'm not clear. V'zeh mavur b'Sanhedrin sham Rabbi Shmuel the Sover. The af b'Avodah Zarah b'tzina yaver mikra zeh V'chai b'hem. Whatever, the machlokes appears in a couple places in Shas. Venira. Okay, now we start talking about what I was talking about before. The Svar Chitzayna. Right? So, if you need a pasuk to tell me that I should go on living and not be over an Avera. So what is the Svar Chitzayna? What would I be thinking before the pasuk? What would I be thinking without a pasuk?
So why do we need a pasuk?
What?
So I mean, the question is why do we need a pasuk?
No, that's not going to be the question.
That
No, the pasuk shows you which one of the two choices, what the right? You have choice A, choice B. Svar Chitzayna. No psukim whatsoever. Yarag val yaver or yaver val yaharag. Okay? Apparently, if I need a pasuk to tell me that the din is yaver val yaharag, so the Svar Chitzayna is yarag val yaver, like the Mesil Sharma I was quoting. He's the Baira, we're in Ephraim. Why is our existential angst, our fear of non-existence, our fear of death, why is that an excuse to be over anything? Okay. Venera.
Maybe we need the pasuk that you chai b'hem, it's a mitzvah. You're not allowed to sacrifice yourself.
You mean on the pasuk? I would think it's voluntary.
Right.
If you want to.
Pasuk tells us chai b'hem.
Very good, excellent.
You're not allowed to.
It just this is also machlokes Rishonim, and the Rambam shita is that if you're mischased, if you're Ma'aser Nefesh, where the halacha does not demand Mesiras Nefesh, that's suicide. That's the Rambam shita, famous Rambam shita. Okay, let's see how the Minchas Chinuch handles it. I hear what you're saying. Maybe the Svar Chitzayna is if the halacha is not machriya, do what you want. Yeah, without the pasuk, you want to die. You want to live. I'm not getting involved. All right, it's a little bit schwer to hear on a matter of life and death that the halacha wouldn't be machriya for us. But okay, let's see what the Minchas Chinuch says. V'nira the ilav krav v'chai b'hem without the pasuk v'chai b'hem. He doesn't use the terminology as far as but like I said, this as I read in the yeshivas. Have amina v'aldich gesagt. Limtza nashal kol aver shebetayra. The svara is, without a pasuk, you have to be Ma'aser Nefesh to avoid any aver in the Torah under any circumstance. B'tzina, b'fahasia, yabishaz hashma, not b'shaz hashma, it doesn't matter. If it's a mitzvah of the Torah, and the choice is yarg val yaver, yaver val yahareg, so the din should be yarg val yaver. Shaloi lav, exeris HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to give up your life not to be over Hashem's ratzon. The gilui of the Torah, the drush of the chai b'hem, teaches me fakert. No, you don't have to give up your life for everything. Im kain, here's the kasha, the Minchas Chinuch. You had your kasha, here's the kasha, the Minchas Chinuch. Im kain, the ben noyach, the loiksiv, the pasuk of the chai b'hem v'lo shiyamas ben is a pasuk that was Namar al b'nai Yisrael. It's not part of the Shev Mitzvah ben noyach. So b'nai noyach, who don't have Kol HaTorah Kula, who don't have this pasuk, this mitzvah, shall we say? Yeah, you say it's a mitzvah, it's not a rishus, it's a mitzvah. So the sver is, I've got my mitzvahs too, I'm a ben hayach, I have my 7 mitzvahs, I should die rather than be over any of them. Tzarich limsa nafshal kol shel mitzvah shalei. Okay, he's going to quote the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it's going to get a little bit. Before I go weiter, we're trying to make this more or less topical, not mamish the parsha, but last week's parsha. There's a pasuk that says that Moshe Rabbeinu grew up and he went out and he saw the suffering of the Yidden and he saw an Egyptian taskmaster hitting his fellow Yid, and it says Vayifa chay v'chay v'yar kenish. Turned this way and that way. He saw there was no one there. So Alpi, the pun of Pshat and Torah, he didn't want witnesses. He was about to murder this guy, wanted to get away with it. Alpi the Drash, he was mistakel into the future diaries. He saw no Gerim were going to come out of this fellow, and that was his hat to kill him. So there's a big shmooze. Rashi brings the chazal of that he saw no Gerim were going to come out. The Mizrahi and the Levush ask a kasha on Rashi. And we mentioned this in Shul, and we learned Kli Chamda here before Kriyas Torah. We mentioned this last week. They ask a kasha like this. They said, "V'udas gehert gevarn." Where do you hear such a thing? The din is, if Sanhedrin paskins on somebody at the Chai Misa, a pregnant woman about to give birth, you kill her that day. You don't wait. Cheshbain is going to give birth, not going to give birth. Vladim ksherim, Vladim mamzeh. Zelo bo ala cheshbon. If the person requires execution, you execute them. Right? So he says he doesn't understand. what is Rashi saying? That Moshe ben Baruch Kadshay saw that no Gerim were going to come out. And if Gerim were going to come out of him, if he's Mechuyev Misa, he's Mechuyev Misa. If he's not Mechuyev Misa, leave him alone. If he is Mechuyev Misa, why is that a cheshbon? Pardon me?
It was only Misa B'dei Shemayim.
Okay. That's the teretz. The Rambam says that Goy Shehiki Yisrael is Chayev Misa Avalein and Neragolov. Okay, Balt. The Kli Chamda asks it even a little bit sharper. Okay, he says, what's the pashup shot in the pasuk? Not that he was looking into the future to see if Gerim will come out. The pashup shot in the pasuk is, I don't want witnesses. He's scared. What's he scared for? He says. There's a famous Rambam that says that the reason why Shimon and Levi were allowed to slaughter the entire city of Shechem is because each citizen of the city of Shechem was Mechuyev Misa. Else what? Else dinam. One of the Shav Mitzvah Benayach is they're supposed to set up a court system, a judicial system. No nepotism, no corruption. If you're the mayor's son, doesn't mean that you get off the hook. Over here, nobody from Shechem, from the city of Shechem, was punishing the person of Shechem. So all of them were over on dinam, which is a big chiddush of the Rambam, because if the corrections officers, if the police don't do their job, so I have to become a vigilante. Apparently, that's the pashat the mashmois of the Rambam. That if the court system, if the political system, if the government is corrupt, then you got to make a citizen's arrest, or in this case, a citizen's execution. And if you don't, you become mechuyev misa. So the Kli Chamda asks in Masharfer. He's looking to see if they're witnesses. He's worried about getting in trouble. If he's not going to execute the guy, and he's mechuyev misa, so then Moshe Rabbeinu will be mechuyev misa. The same way that the people of Shechem were mechuyev misa because they didn't do to Shechem what was coming to him. Moshe Rabbeinu will be mechuyev misa because he didn't do what's coming to them. Elamai. Okay, so the teretz the Kli Chamda says he's medayik in another Rambam that this whole Indian of Goy Shehika Yisrael, the Yechayev Misa is only an Indian of a Misa B'dei Shemayim. Okay? But the more obvious, I think, way to be Miyashevit, the Lefianiyas idea is, but it's really schwer on the other Rambam. What I would have said, just als the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, what I would have said by way of teretz is, you mechuyev in dinam, mehechates you mechuyev in mesiras nefesh for dinam. A guy has Shavu Mitzvahs, but who says he's mechuyev in mesiras nefesh? L'maisa, if Parai and his government and his cohorts and his police force are not abiding by the law, which they obviously weren't abiding by the law, they were all Evdei Avodah Zarah, they were all Shtufei Zima. It was not a society that was exactly nizar in the times of Sari Yimenu. So that's also something that the Mefarshim plunted us with. They're going to kill Avram to avoid this Reshes Ish. What, killing somebody is not one of the Shav Mitzvah B'nai Noach. But whatever the case may be, it was all out the window by the time this Parai was on the throne. Right? Even if it was the same Parai that knew Yosef, it wasn't the Parai from Avram Avinu's side. They were not nizar in Shav Mitzvah Noach. They're not nizar in Shav Mitzvah Noach. They're going to kill me for Haraya when they found out he was a fugitive on the run. They did want to kill him. So, he wants to get away with it. If he's going to do what the law demands of him to do, he's going to be in very hot water. He's got to be Ma'aseh Nefesh. Okay, it's not a teretz because again, if it's a teretz, then it's a kasha on the Rambam, what the Rambam writes about the Anshe Shechem. But anyway, just to tie it in a little bit more with the parsha. Let me get weiter. Okay, so here's the problem. Okay, so we're smack dab in the middle, second one on the line. With Sanhedrin, Sham, Amid Beis, the sugya over there of Mesiras Nefesh and Sanhedrin, Ibai, it's a kasha in the Gemara, it's a shayla in the Gemara. I ben Noach tzarech l'kadosh Hashem. If there is such an Indian of a ben Noach having to be Mekadosh Hashem Shema, in other words, to be Ma'aseh Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, rather than avoid doing an Avera. Uv'taisa Sham, Ein Hayam Adav Dor Mask V'im, Daitam de Ifshata Habaya, Dain Tzarech l'kadosh Hashem. It's not such a super clear sugya, but the Taisus over there, Paskins, the Taisus understanding of the sugya is that after the dust settles, the maskana is that a guy is not mechuyev in Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. The guy has to keep his Zayin mitzvahs, but not ad kedei being Ma'aseh Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. V'cheinu b'Rambam, Perek Yud, b'Malachim, Malacha Beis, the Rambam passes that way too. The Ben Noach she'on say anos, Ben Noach that somebody forced him. I mean, When you go to yeshiva and you hear your Rabbi, you hear your Magashir saying over the Gemara, it's always, if a guy comes to you with a gun, over here it's guy on guy violence, I suppose. I can't imagine it's here where a Yid would be ma'anis a guy to be over one of the Shev Mitzvah Ben Nayach. Probably wouldn't make a difference though. At any rate, the Ben Nayach unsay anas, whoever the forcer is, whoever it is who wants to force him to be over his Avera. Lav or achas mitzvah, says mutalai ath lav avodah zarah. Even the most basic of all the averas, avodah zarah, that every other mitzvah, whether your system is tayag mitzvahs or whether your system is zayin mitzvahs, the basic thing is that I'm being avodah Hashem, I'm not being avodah zarah. Mumala avodah zarah is a mumala chal Torah kula. Avodah zarah is it. It's the ultimate betrayal of Hashem. Even in avodah zarah, no different than the other 6 mitzvahs benayach, the maskana is, if one guy comes to another guy and he says, I want you to worship avodah zarah, I'm going to kill you. He says, I'm sorry, I'm a Noahide, I'm a monotheist, there's not my religious persuasion. I know it's not, but it's going to be, or you're going to be dead. He should do whatever the Anas wants him to do and go on living. As I paskin Taisus and as I paskin the Rambam. Ulachayra kasha, here's the question. Lama lo yischayvu limsas atzmim. Kivan the like sivetzel v'chaybem. If we're saying now that the svara chitzayna, the outside svara, before I have any pasuk, is that you've got to lay down your life rather than to be over an avera, it's only because of the heter. It's a heter v'chaybem. It's a mitzvah, it's a heter, but without that pasuk, what I would think on my own is everything is yarg val yaver, every mitzvah. So why shouldn't goyim? Don't call it Kiddush Shem Shemayim. It's not a bazundra mitzvah. It's a svara. It's a logical thing. You've got 7 mitzvahs. What's the sheer? How far do you have to go to maintain them? You have to go till the ultimate, the full measure of devotion. Death. You have to allow yourself to be killed.
If a Yid doesn't have to, how can it be more common than a Yid? Okay.
That's a nice kasha. But do you hear his kasha? His kasha is that no pasuk. Okay, I just want to flush out his kasha a little bit. There's a famous. I'll come to you 1 second. Famous halacha that we all know in Hilchos Geiris. Gershon is gayer kakatan shanal dami. When a person's magayer to Judaism, so the din is like a newborn person. Has many ramifications. One of the ramifications is lagabi arayas. A lot of arayas, a lot of the forbidden unions are based on biological relationship. The din midaraysa is, if a brother and a sister convert to Judaism, they can marry one another. They're not related to one another. They're not related to one another. But the Rabbanan came along and they said, there were guys that no, they can't do this. Why? We took a step down. We thought that we were being spiritually elevated by becoming Jews. We're not. When we were non-Jews, we weren't. It would have been incest. We're not allowed to marry one another. Now we convert to Judaism, now we can commit incest? What kind of religion is this? So that it shouldn't be as a defamation of Torah. So Mel Rabban said, no, it's also, it's not important. If they know it's also with Rabban, it's also with Rabban. We're saying it's also. All right? So he's saying a similar svar. Yeah? Maybe can Klei Nazai. Ein Achanami. The svar chitzayna is you should always lay down your life and not be over an avera. The pasuk of Achai Behem comes and tells you the opposite. But once we have a pasuk of Achai Behem, now we're not going to say the Goyim have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh for everything. If we Jews only have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh for 3 things. A guy will be Magayer, say, wow, this is unbelievable. Before, when I was a guy, I had to die rather than steal less than a Shava Pruta. Now, if somebody tells me to steal, I can embezzle $2 million, as long as somebody has a gun to the small of my back. Judaism, it's a great gig if you can get it. What a country, what a religion. It's great. Yeah. No wonder Jews have shaky business rules, right?
We find I think Mefarcheses.
Yeah.
Ben Noach is not allowed to eat it.
Yeah.
And they'll get killed if he eats it.
Yep. There's the famous.
And they eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do find
the Mishnah Melech wrote a sefer Parshas Drachim. He basically made a whole sefer out of this. For those of you who are not familiar, one of the very interesting chazalim about the fight between Yosef and the Achim was one of Vayava Yosef's Dibasam Ra'al Aviyim. He brought Lashon Hara to Yankov Avinu. What was the lashon hara? So one of the lashon hara we say is he said they were eating Eivim and Achai. What does it mean they were eating Eivim and Achai? They were eating very, very fresh meat. Steak tartar. We have a hard time with sushi fish. First, they ate sushi meat. Steak tartar, the fancy restaurants called. What were the Shvatim doing? There's a level. I take this on faith. I've never seen this with my own eyes on Shlachtais, but after you shecht, after you slash the animal's throat, so it's still like quivering. Okay, before I don't know, automatic nervous response. I don't know exactly the anatomy of it, but before it gets still and it's totally dead. At that point, it's called a mafarches. So, Eivim and Achai, if you slice off, you start butchering the animal, you take a cut of meat then and you eat it, even if you eat it later, that's the Isser of Eivim and Achai. A limb from a living animal. But the gather of the mitzvah is different for a Ben Noach and for Yisrael. For a Noahide, so as long as it's mafarches, it's still called Eivim and Achai. For a Yid, as long as he did the Maisa Shchita, it's Shachut Ka'alacha, even if in the biological reality it still seems to be alive, a Shachut is a Mace. Shachut is dead. So for a Yid, since we have Shchita, so we're allowed to eat from an animal. We start allowed to take Evarim and later eat from an animal, it's still mafarches. That's what Yosef saw the Achim doing. He saw his brothers eating or butchering up an animal when it was still a mafarches. So Chazal say the machlokes was, what was the halachic status of the Bnei Yaakov, the Bnei Yisrael before Matan Torah? Did they have the din of a Yid, or were they still considered Bnei Noach? Yosef held that l'chumra we have to treat ourselves as Bnei Noach, and the Achim said no, we're full-fledged Yidden. We're keeping kol atar kula shlei nitna, so we have the status of Yidden already. We're allowed to eat from avarchas. Like I said, the precious drachim goes through kama v'kama sugyas throughout Sefer Bereshis. Based on this, it all turns on this question: Ben Noach, Ben Yisrael before Matan Torah. But anyway, okay. So you're pointing out a good precedent also. You're quoting the Gemara of Banam Kedusha Kal Kedusha Chamura. We don't want Bnei Noach to feel that Torah and Taryag Mitzvah is a step down. And he's saying, "Vos tutmim and Eivim and Achai." By Eivim and Achai, Chazal weren't guys like that. They didn't say that we're going to aser mefarches for Bnei Yisrael, so the gerim to Yiddishkeit shouldn't say Banam Kedusha Kal and Kedusha Chamura. So anyway, if he's right, but did you hear his teretz? Did you hear what he's trying to say? Okay, let me just explain it for maybe not everyone's following what he was trying to say. He was saying he's trying to answer the Minchas Chinuch kasha. The Minchas Chinuch asks the kasha like this: you see from the pasuk, from the drasha of V'chai Behem, that what we call the Svar Chitzayna, what I would have thought, absent any psukim, is that everything is Yarek Val Yaver. A person has to lay down their life and never be over any Aver, the slightest Aver, right? So he says, why isn't that taka, aliba the hilchasa, halacha lamaisa, why is that not the law for Goyim, for Bnei Noach? Non-Jews don't have the pasuk of V'chai Behem. The maskana of the Sugi and Sanhedrin, both according to the Rambam and according to Taisus, is that they don't have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, that if somebody tries to get a Ben Noach to be Geisel, or to be Avodah Avodah Zarah, or to eat Eivim and Achai, right? Any of the mitzvahs Ben Noach, they should be Avodah Aver. Why should they be Avodah Aver? They don't have the heter or the mitzvah, whatever you want to call it, the pasuk of V'chai Behem. The svar is they should lay down their lives and not be Avodah Aver. So he wants to be mataritz that may be a good Taina and a good Svar before the pasuk of V'chai Behem. But now that we're not holding by the Svar Chitzai anymore, now that we do have a drasha, now that the pasuk says V'chai Behem, V'lo Shemas Behem, you should live by them and not die by them, that's how we know it for other mitzvahs, not for the three cardinal sins. For other mitzvahs, you should transgress and not lay down your life. Right? Once you have that pasuk, now we're not going to allow Goyim, we're not going to say that the din by Goyim should be Mesiras Nefesh for everything, because that relatively seems to be on a higher ruchniistic plane, spiritual plane, than Yid. So that was your attempt at teretz, and your timing, we see by Mefarches, by Eivim and Achai, not like that, we don't mind. So sometimes we'll say that the laws are stricter for Goyim than they are for Yid. The truth of the matter is that, I'm not being machri over you. You can have it out among yourselves, but the truth of the matter is that you could say it even stronger. I'm not holding in that sugi of Geras of Banim and Kedusha Kal and Kedusha Chamur, but that's not the only instance. Now that I'm stopping to think about it, there are many, many ways in which the Shav Mitzvahs Ben Nayach are more chomer than Tayag Mitzvahs. First of all the Shav Mitzvahs Ben Nayach are Chiyuv and Misa. If a Jew steals, it's a monetary issue. If a guy steals, it's a capital offense. Second of all, the shiurim are more chomer. For a Jew, it's not considered gazel unless it's a shav pruta. We were tumbling about that the last 2 weeks. If you're a chayvel, if you damage somebody and it's worth less than a shav pruta, you do get malchus. You don't get malchus. But we know that the shir, both in mazik and in gazel, is a shav pruta. Akum neragal pachas make a shav pruta. A non-Jew, even if he steals less than a shav pruta, it's a capital offense. So why don't we say in all of these things that the banim kedusha kal kedusha chamura? Let me think about this for a second. I don't have to be the only one to think. Anybody else wants some input, it's fine. For those of you on Torah anytime, there's an interactive shir. There's not a lecture. We're trying to get input from everybody here. Maybe we should swivel the camera and have a bouncing mic.
It flexes on the ability to rectify yourself.
What? The
mitzvahs.
Yeah?
You have the ability to rectify yourself.
Tshuva?
Tshuva.
Yeah.
So a Jew could do tshuva on stealing, or do tshuva on whatever other mitzvah it is. Yes.
Kol zachnas b'chal v'chem. Okay, so does that make Judaism an easier or a higher religion or a lower religion?
Higher kedusha.
Yeah.
To rectify yourself.
So then why don't we let a non-Jewish brother and sister who convert to Judaism marry one another?
Because that's not an elevated. It doesn't demonstrate any elevation.
And stealing up to a Shava Pruta does?
Stealing up to a Shava Pruta and then returning it demonstrates the ability to rectify it. There's no way that a brother and sister marrying demonstrates elevated conscience or soul or anything like that.
So you're arguing with him, you're supporting him.
No, you asked what would be the difference between the other Mrs. B'nai Noach and marrying a sibling.
Right.
I was saying that the difference between marrying a sibling is marrying a sibling has no, doesn't demonstrate any elevated.
There is or isn't a shear by going for stealing?
No shear. Smallest amount.
Okay, so think
The
about
Nerech is Nerech Pachas. What?
when you create a shear for
Right.
something, you're saying that the person doesn't even want to do this thing,
Right.
right? And you're creating a safeguard to make sure they shouldn't even approach the asr, the yisr.
First of all, the Sfar you're saying is a Sfar on the Rabbanans. We're talking about Midaraisa. Shiurim are Allah L'Moshe Messina, but they're Daraisa. They're Menatayra. It's not the Rabbanan instituted Shiurim. Shiurim are straight with a Messiah. It's pure Torah Shabbat Peh, but straight back to Moshe Ben Sinai.
When somebody has a shear, you're making a statement that this person doesn't want to do this thing, right? They want to make sure that they don't ever do this thing, and so you're creating a safeguard so that if they accidentally do something.
No. I'm not understanding you or you're not understanding me. What you're saying is a Darabanan Dika sounding Svar. It's like saying Shvusim on Shabbos. Yeah, the Rabban don't want you riding on horseback on Shabbos. Maybe you rip a branch off a tree. That's not what. The purpose of Shiurim is to define activities. What is a Maisa Achil? What is the legal threshold of eating? A Kazayas B'chdei Achil's Pras. What's the legal threshold of drinking? What's the legal threshold of a Biyasur? That's also Machlokes. It's also Shir and Chazal. Whatever it is, yeah.
One by Goyim, one by Jews, right?
Yeah, there's this double standard apparently.
Okay. Well, so the question is, what does having a shear say about the person for whom the shear applies?
It doesn't really say even that much about the person about who it applies. Actually, hopefully, we're going to get in a couple more weeks. We're going to get to mitzvah. One second. We're going to get to the mitzvahs of probably of Achilas Matzah, Achilas Chaim Pesach. It's a big sugya in Shas, but within Minchas Chinuch a lot. How what we call Chatzi Shir Asim and Atayr works. Okay, but basically, here's the thing. And again, I invite you to to cogitate about this and say a difference between B'nai Noach and B'nai Yisrael, as far as this is concerned. But the truth is, let's take about the Isra Achil on Yom Kippur. Yeah, it's actually a bigger shir. It's Kasevis Agas. It's a little bigger than a Kazayas. Right? A large date with its pit. That's the shir of Achil on Yom Kippur. Right? It doesn't mean that if you eat a half of a date or a quarter of a date or an infinitesimal amount of a date that you were allowed to do it. It's awesome. There's a threshold basically where Einshim kick in. Usually Einshim B'dei Adam, usually punishments the Bezdin meets out. But even for Einshim B'dei Shemaim, even creases, right? If you don't eat the proper shear in the case of Achila within a certain amount of time, then the Einshim don't kick in. It doesn't mean that it was permitted to do before that. It was also forbidden. Nevertheless, okay, by B'nai Noach, the Einish is, so to speak, swift and immediate. Whatever is forbidden is punishable. There's no dissonance between what's forbidden and what's punishable. It's all the same thing.
I don't know if this is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, let's say, for example, my younger son
Yeah.
is not allowed to touch the knife drawer.
Right.
He's not allowed to touch it. My oldest son is allowed to open it. He's not allowed to take out a knife. Because the fact that he has a finer shear, even though it's more advanced, I guess, closer to the Isser or whatever,
Right.
demonstrates a higher consciousness, a higher level of trust.
Okay. Again.
To take example of
yeah.
the case of Shechita.
Right.
Right, so a Jew does Shechita,
Right.
he slaughters the animal in an appropriate way, a godly way.
Yeah.
But for a guy, you say, what's the reason of Avram Nachai? Don't be brutal.
Right.
So the fact that our shear is closer to is finer, demonstrates elevated consciousness or elevated holiness or guidelines. A finer guide.
See, but here's the difference, okay? Etzem, okay, there is nothing wrong with touching a knife thrower. You don't want your little kid who lacks sense to touch the knife thrower because he may actually handle a knife. And there's really nothing wrong with handling a knife either. There's something wrong with plunging your knife into your sister's abdomen instead of into cutting your frankfurter with it. That's the problem, right? One second,
Right.
okay? So again, let me contrast these two things for you, okay? Horseback riding or violin playing on Shabbos, okay, versus eating half of a date on Yom Kippur, okay? No, I'm trying to compare and contrast two svaras of why something should be wrong, okay? In the case of playing violin on Shabbos or riding horseback on Shabbos, midaraisa, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's like opening and closing a knife drawer, right? The problem is, we're worried that if we allow you to ride horseback on Shabbos, you'll rip a branch off a tree. We're afraid that if we allow you to play violin on Shabbos, the violin string breaks, you'll repair it. And that already is, both of those things are chil Shabbos, right? So repairing the string and ripping a branch off a tree, that is chil Shabbos. In the case of not eating on Yom Kippur, the shear is a kasevas agasa. The Rabbanan came along and they said, no, we don't even want you eating a little bit because you may stumble and eat the shear. There's a mandama like that in the Gemara, but we pass on Chatzi Shir Asam Natara, not Asam Rabbanan. Chatzi Shir Asam Natara means it's wrong from the first second. There's a certain threshold when Einshim kick in. So I'm not quite copying, elevated spirituality, lower spirituality. I understand the mushal, the model that you're giving, that the non-Jew is like an immature, a less mature kid, can handle less, right? That's what you were trying to say? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But he is like the more mature child, right? So again, I hear that more of a svara in the Rabbanans. If there would be the Rabbanans by Shav Mitzvah Nayach, there don't seem to be any.
Having the shear represents some rachmanas, that the Jew is operating within, that maybe the non-Jew isn't operating within.
Again, I don't know all the sugyas in Shas, but Lefum Riyata, what it says to me, what Shiurim by Yidden say to me, I'll give a famous mashal. The Welt says, Rabbi Bar Leibowitz was one of the subtlest, profoundest lamdanim of the interwar period in the yeshiva world, right? So I say a Maisa by Baruch Bar like this. He came to a sugya of Parashal Hefker. So he went like this. He said, Parashal Hefker? A cow, an ownerless cow? What's going on over here? An ox that gores a cow, the red heifer, the paraduma, the ox that gores a cow and it was pregnant and now you find a calf on the side, a para and a donkey. He went through 25 sugyas in Shas, okay, that involved cows. And then he said, an ownerless cow? A ku onadin? Das oichet a ku? So a cow with no halachic framework, that's also a cow? No, for you and me, a cow is something with horns that is the source of all of our dairy foods. It goes moo, that looks stupid, bovine, yeah? We deal in physical realities. Yeah? Rabbi dealt in halachic realities, in the abstraction. Similar Maisa. Or Moshe Feinstein Levracha came late once to a chasana. So, whatever, they got stuck in traffic. And the Gabbai, the Mashamish, because where you want to hold, his driver, his handler, said, Rosh Hashiva, we should hurry. We should get to the chuppah. They're waiting for us. And like by many Yiddish simchas, some wildcat minion sprung up and they were davening. So he says, Chanish gain. I said, I can't go. So he thought he was sick, Khalil. He said, should I bring you a cup of water? Why can't the Rosh Hashiva go? He says, Steht da Wand. There's a wall here. What am I, Superman? I'm supposed to break through walls? He says, what? There's a wall here. He says, the Eilam Davin, the halacha, you're not allowed to walk in front of somebody who's davening. So as far as Moshe was concerned, there was a wall there. The way I understand Shiurim, yeah, is that in Sram HaKadoshim it says that Derech Eretz Kadma L'Torah is an allusion to the Sheva Mitzvah Ben Noach. Everything in Sheva Mitzvah Ben Noach is a lot of pshatim what Derech Eretz means. Taiftarim Derech Eretz, a lot of different pshatim. One of the pshatim is that it's part of what political philosophy is called natural law. Okay, B'nai Noach have to do with Ma'aser Bereishis. Only Jews have to do with Matan Torah. And Matan Torah is a world of abstraction. In a world of abstraction, eating does not necessarily mean, or it's not limited to, mastication and swallowing. There's an abstract legal construct. I'll give you another example. Okay, Jews in marriage have something called erison and nesuin, and it's even in a certain sense a more severe adultery. Okay, to commit adultery with an arusa than with an nesua. Right? Masha'enkein by b'nai Noach bu'ulas baal yesh lahem, naira marasa ein lahem. Right? If a marriage has been consummated, what we would call common law wife, a couple began living together. Okay, she's my woman now. Right? If somebody else is intimate with her, that's adultery. But the fact that we've pledged ourselves to one another, we've singled her out, Mukudeshus Li, you're also everybody else. These are words, like the licentious people want to say, what's marriage? It's a piece of paper. Until it comes to gay rights, then marriage all of a sudden means something. But for 20 years before the marriage equality bill, it's a piece of paper. Who cares? I need the government's approval. Yeah, if you're a behemoth, then that's just a piece of paper. If you're an Adam with an neshama, that you can realize spiritual and abstract constructs, then then marriage is very significant. That's how I hear the difference between. It's not a question of Rahmanis, of going easier on Jews. We'll let them get away with more. I don't think that's it at all. If Shad is, the Torah is, like Rabbi Ber wondered, a ku on adin is like a taku, a cow without a halachic framework, that's also a cow. The halacha defines the reality, defines everything for us. So in halacha, there can be this idea of shiurim. It's not a legal act of eating until it's this much volume consumed within this much time. That's how I hear it. Okay. You know what? Let's read on. Yeah. L'chayra kasha. Okay, I'm just going to repeat the kasha. L'chayra kasha. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines on the bottom, 2 words from then a line. L'chayra kasha. L'malay is chayv v'limsa es asman. Why shouldn't they mechuyev to be ma'aser nefesh? Even if they're lacking this pasuk, Taisus basically asked this question. I didn't invent this question. This is their teretz. Okay. We say every morning, some of us say every morning anyway, Rabbi Shmuel Leimer, Such an idea called the binyan av mishnei ksuvim, that the Torah reveals a din in one or two psukim, and that becomes the overarching principle that applies everywhere. So, like I mentioned before, am I no good? Are we out of time? Okay. Like I mentioned before, there's machlokes from Shmuel and the Chachamim. If the cardinal sins that are yaharg val yaver, die rather than transgress, are 3 in number or 2 in number. We paskin like the Chachamim that for Gilui Arayis, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah, doesn't matter what else the variables are, what else the circumstances are, yaharg val yaver. Rabbi Shmuel dissents. Rabbi Shmuel says Avodah Zarah not. But those two everyone agrees on. That to avoid Gilui Arayis, or to avoid homicide, to avoid Shvichas Damim, that you've got to lay down your own life, that's a davar muskim. Says the Tosfos that once I have those, actually one is a svara. The Ritzich is not from a pasuk, but it's the svara tells me that I'm not allowed to kill anybody else to avoid my own death. And there's a pasuk, a hekesh between that and Naira HaMarasa, and from Naira HaMarasa I learn all the arayas. At any rate, but I have 2 dinim in the Torah, with 2 inyanim, 2 mitzvahs in the Torah, where the din is yaharg val yaver. Okay, so now I'm anyway not dealing with this Svarach Yitzayna. It's not tabula rasa. It's not a blank slate. The Torah teaches me that you have to be ma'aseh nefesh by these 2 mitzvahs to avoid Gilui Arayis and to avoid Shvichas Damim. You have to be ma'aseh nefesh. Without the pasuk of V'chai B'hem, I would think minyan av mishnei ksuvim. Why should it be any different than the other mitzvahs of the Torah? You have to be yaharg val yaver for everything. Comes V'chai B'hem. I had it backwards. I thought V'chai B'hem comes first, and then you need psukim to teach me Gilui Arayis, Shvichas Damim, Gilui Arayis of Avodah Zarah, and Shvichas Damim from a svara. Right? The Tais is saying it's the other way around. Okay? Maybe the Svarach Yitzayna was that he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. You don't have to give up your life for something. No mitzvah to give up your life. Torah is megala by Shvichas Damim and by Naira Marasa / Gilui Arayis. That you do have to give up your life. I would think that should be a limud for all the mitzvahs of the Torah. Comes V'chai B'hem, it says no, it's only for those 2/3. Yeah, it's not for anything else. So because the Bnei Noach don't have the limudim by Gilui Arayis and by Shvichas Damim, so that's why they don't need V'chai B'hem. But by them, let's go back to the Svarach Yitzayna. The Svarach Yitzayna is Mutav Sheichal Shah B'Sachas. In their case, they can't be Shomer Shabbos. Mutav Sheyaver Avodah Zarah Pamachas, and then be over the rest of his life. He should be over the one through God the rest of us. I got to
But Noach wouldn't be mechayev even by Avodah Zarah and Shvichas Damim either, right?
That's right, and that's it. That's how the Rambam and Taisus paskins. They're not mechayev. They're not mechayev. Right, even by the big 3. Right. Im kei muchach the mitzvah svar lo yamrin yaharg val yaver. It comes out from that Tosfos that you don't say yaharg val yaver. Rakadei shaloi leilif meritzeich u'menar marasa itzrach v'chai b'hem. By Yidden, so that we shouldn't learn out there should be an allgemeiner thing, an overarching principle of yaharg val yaver, sourced in Shvichas Damim and Gilui Arayis. That's why I need the pasuk of v'chai b'hem to tell me you should transgress, you should go on living. Im ken b'ben noach lo shaykh l'melch meritzeich. Im ken lama likra v'chai b'hem, u'mitzad svara yava yaharg kama. Okay, so his teretz basically the Tosfos teretz. Everybody satisfied with this? Correct.
So
Right.
What if they do, and they like, and they go over and beyond?
Well, is part of the Noahide law include suicide or not, or is suicide only forbidden to Jews? I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think that suicide is forbidden. There's darshan psukim to the Bnei Noach as well. And since the Rambam says that being ma'aseh nefesh in a place where the halacha does not demand you to is tantamount to suicide, then no, they couldn't be heroes and say, well, I know I'm not mechuyev to do this, but I'm going to lay down my life anyway. I'm a man of principle. I chucked the Trinity 20 years ago. I don't believe in that poppycock. I'm not going to genuflect. I'm not going to profess any belief in a Trinity. Don't be a hero. If a guy's got a gun to the small of your back, do it. There's a beautiful teretz, a beautiful shlichel minchas chinuch, beautiful teretz. I just have one problem with it. Why I wouldn't learn it out to the other 6 mitzvahs? I don't know. The Yud Mina Shatar and the Dreshes behind, I don't know if that applies to the mitzvahs, to the Torah of the Zayin Mitzvah B'nai. But what about Shrichas Dama? Shrichas Dama is not pasuk. Shrichas Dama is pasuk. Svar, excuse me. Shrichas Dama, I know you're not allowed to commit murder, even on pain that you might die. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, "My chazis the damach didach samach tvei, doma damach the high gavra samach tvei." Who says that your blood is redder than the other person? In other words, okay, where you're balancing 2 human lives, and you presume the equality of human life, Shavuot does. You're not allowed to act. What makes you less of a murderer than the guy with the gun to the small of your back? Your life is worth more. What are you? The captain, the Italian captain who ran the ship aground? You held your life as cheshever. So I could understand all this whole shlichul Torah would be beautiful if the din by a ben nayach is that for the other 6 mitzvahs he doesn't have to be ma'aser nefesh, but by shlichus dam he does. For achitzaynus, for aptimis, it's a svara. It's not a pasuk. It's a svara that you have to you give up your life rather than commit murder. Okay, we're light for Marav. Let's see. Do we have